so this is a really difficult session to do because we leave out most of the good stuff. There have been so many impressive data-driven stories done over the last few years, countless since the last time we met in person. It was 2019, 4 years. We're looking back a couple of years, trying to find examples of really excellent data-driven journalism, but also getting sort of a variety. But again, we're going to give some links to places that I think constantly are updating great data-driven stories, having methodology, having training in doing this stuff. So this is kind of, the appetizer session. Sample this, sample this, sample this, and you'll go and find other things that are more attractive, more interesting perhaps, but at least we can show how far we've come. I wanted a little context to all of this, how long it's been going on and how far it's come. I started working with data, this is shocking, in 1986 with antiquated equipment and things called floppy drives and so forth. I only had to work with a mainframe computer a couple of times, and that was a nightmare. And now floppies would be a nightmare. But we've come so far, but a lot of the basic principles of data-driven journalism, or whatever you call it, have remained the same. And I think the biggest leap we've made, and Jennifer may disagree, is in visualization. And you'll just see how much visualization of data has happened. In the early days, journalists thought columns and rows being published on hard copy were like the most interesting thing in the world, and we couldn't understand why people were really bored. Jennifer, I met, 1990 or so? When was that boot camp? 92. But we started working together in 94.
I was 12.
Yeah, we started working together in 94. So we have a long history of watching the evolution of these stories. And for us, these are just incredibly exciting stories to see. And it's sort of like dreams come true after a while. So anything you want to mention at this point, Jennifer? Okay. Why don't you click ahead and we'll start talking about stories. We're up there. Anyway, I'm currently at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm what's called a night chair, which is supposed to be a practical journalist who will be the bridge between the academy and the newsrooms and vice versa. I have a great job, and I'm very involved with the nonprofit newsroom movement, as many of you know. And when we started GIJN, I think we had 30 nonprofits, and now as members we have 240 something. So, and Jennifer, a little bit about your long and distinguished history.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's just amazing to see all this. Like, some of you are from countries where, like, when we did training, it was the first time anybody had talked about data journalism. So it's really great to see this. And I am leaving a job as senior editor at the Center for Public Integrity. I'm staying to do some work with them, but I had just accepted a position as faculty at UC Berkeley. So I am changing jobs and get to teach all kinds of young people the wonders of data journalism.
Okay.
I can't sit down.
Okay. I'll get out of your way.
Oh, wait. Okay. I had a little food poisoning this morning, so if I'm not 100% energetic, that's why.
I love these technical moments because the first conference we did on data together was in 1994 in Silicon Valley, and the heart of the internet. And it didn't work for the first 3 out of 4 days. So we had to go to a blank screen and said, if you could see the web, this is what it would look like. So we'll see what we can do here. We'll wait. It was all working so well. So I'm waiting for a signal. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Thank you.
Now wait a minute. What will we do wrong to stop this? Are we okay now?
There we go. We're good.
We're good. All right. Cool. Thanks. Thank you.
So as Brant said, we're going to just give you like a tasty appetizer of some of the stories from lots of places, lots of techniques to try to give you a variety. I forgot the glasses I need to read this.
Okay.
That's how old I am, so it's okay. So powerful stories that test assumptions. I always like stories that test assumptions because it's usually editor assumptions that I can prove wrong. Stories based on data that have to be created. Like there's so much work that's been done to like get documents into data and turn them into amazing stories. Using satellite data to show patterns and uncover practices, show land in a way that we could never look at it before. Applying techniques of scientists to reveal important stories. I was an editor at Reveal, and my reporters every year wanted to go to the American International Geosciences Conference. And every year they got so many story ideas about how to use satellites, how to look at drought, how to sonify data so you could put it on the radio. So we learned so much from those folks. And then some simple analysis. Others are more complex. But all of these tell powerful stories. So
and one of our longtime colleagues who couldn't make it here, Sarah Cohen, sometimes reminds me to keep it simple. And she said, you know, what we really do is we just count. We're just counting things all the time. So don't get lost in your data. You're counting things.
But count it right.
Count it right. Yes.
So a few story examples, and some of these are from we'll give you a list at the end, but there are data journalism contests where a lot of these stories come out, and just so much. I had the honor of judging the Sigma Awards, the International Data Journalism Awards, and there's so many great stories. This is about ocean rising in parts of Uruguay, and what I liked about this story is this last sentence is it isn't just climate change. The main drivers were beyond the reach of the national policy. Human intervention degrades the environment much more and exposes vulnerable populations even more than the variation of 1 millimeter per year in sea level. So the human activity in this area was causing more problems than sea level rise.
Try.
I just like this one because it's so lovely and it teaches me something I didn't know. This is a Reuters story looking at the collapse of insects. And what you'll see is things I didn't know are like these categories of beetle. One kind of beetle has more species than like all mammals or all birds. So just the power of what like insects play in our world, it was kind of amazing to me. And it's just lovely. There's bugs crawling through the project if you scroll it. This is a story from Arij, the Arab Reporters Investigative Journalism. And this story was looking at expropriation orders on real estate and people who lost their homes because the government was taking that land. And it was data that they had all the data orders, and so they were able to show how many citizens were being affected by this process.
Can add one thing. There's a great database. It's not getting shared enough by a guy in Princeton, in the U.S., and he and his team are tracking all the evictions in the U.S. So at some point, I think we'll have a great global eviction story because it's being done everywhere.
This is also a Reuters story. Sorry to have multiple Reuters stories in there, but the graphics in this are beautiful. It is about how bats can bring deadly viruses to human beings. It's based on a pretty interesting analysis, which was borrowed from scientists to show the areas where there's overlap of bats and people and how that can spread disease. This was a public integrity story, and I like this story because it was a short list for the Sigmas, but this young reporter, Amy DePiro, she wanted to show how many kids are not being counted as homeless by schools. What that means is if kids are not counted as homeless, they don't get transportation, they don't get medical services, they don't get a lot of services. So she talked to a lot of academics and researchers and figured out a way to use one statistic that should be a proxy for homeless kids in schools and applied it to show that there are about 300,000 homeless kids in the US that were never identified by their schools.
And one of the things in a lot of these stories is what I call the search for the magic number. You get lots and lots of data and lots of numbers. You're always looking for the number, that one number that tells the story, whether it's a ratio or whatever. And you can see a pattern of that kind of approach. Sort of clear all the debris away so you can see this story truly.
Okay, this is you.
I'm just like completely enamored with all the satellite work that's being done. Looking at deforestation, there's not sure when the session has happened, but there's just been great work done on finding these secret and hidden landing strips, whether it's crime, mining, or whatever. I just love these stories, and full disclosure, way back when my father was working on something called Project Corona, way back when, which turned into Google Earth, basically. So I've been fascinated by satellite imagery and photos from above and what they can tell you, particularly if they're paired with something like change detection software. We report on change, and change detection when it comes to land can tell you so much about what's really happening that's hard to see otherwise. So. Okay, I think this is your ecological disaster one. Oh yeah, that's the one. Oh yeah, the fires. Another thing that I love now is our ability to really track fires and do wildfire analysis. There's been some predictive work we didn't put up done in the U.S. on where the next wildfires will strike in the American West, and of course. We haven't collected all the stuff yet, the data-driven stuff on the Maui fire that got a lot of press around the world. One other thing is there is a great conference to go to that's international. It's called the Esri Conference, and it is the mapping software ArcView. And if anybody can go to that in San Diego once a year, you will come out of that particular conference with so many ideas because there are only about 10 journalists that go to it. So you can go there and appropriate all sorts of procedures and methodologies from other industries, which as journalists, we're really good at stealing other stuff and using it for us. So I just want to really emphasize if you can get there. Oh, and they give a complete waiver if the media shows up on the fees, and normally it's like $2,000 to register for it or something crazy like that. So if you can get there, you'll learn a lot more than anything we can show you. This was a really good one, and looking at smoke, and I believe they built a database on this, and with the sugar companies saying that the air is safe and all of that, and they went ahead and monitored what the real safety was, which was none. It's incredible pollution, incredibly dangerous to the people around it. So one of the things that we've been doing with data too is also using sensors and doing our own testing. That's happening a lot more around the world with consulting with experts on it. So when you're looking at data sets now, there's a lot of combination of things that are happening. There could be geographical data, there can be sensor data, and of course, as you've seen, photography data. So this was just a terrific project. Okay. The next. Right. You ready on this one?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
This is a project that Code Graphica did, and it's just a good example of looking at disparities
Okay.
If you go, I should say that all of this, we will give you the presentation link, and all of these have links within the slides to the stories. And this looks at disparities, gender disparities, and looks at the prediction of if those disparities were addressed, how would it improve life for people?
I think everyone's probably has seen this. Has everyone seen this particular one? This is a fantastic project, just incredibly courageous. To create a database in the middle of a war is it's an awesome thing to see happen. So I won't say anything more, just go and look at this particular project. It's just incredible. To do in real time what's happening during a war. This required some planning too, but you can see what they came up with, the war in Ukraine.
This is a Swedish television story from a couple of years ago that looked at road curves and how dangerous they were and the accidents that were happening in certain curves in highways. And speaking of roads, this is a good example of some mapping. This is a Norwegian story looking at bridges that are neglected. The orange and the red are bridges that have, they're problematic. They're either in bad condition or really bad condition. So you can see all of that red and orange. There are lots and lots of bridges that are problematic there.
And I don't think we have one for dams, but for a long time, Jennifer and I are working with data and dam data and bridge data, and I think it's time for us to all get back to dam data. There's data on dams all over the world, and they are getting really old, and they're going to be collapsing, not just in Libya or anywhere else.
Yep. This is a story from Minneapolis, and I like this story because it's a simple concept but really powerful. When people are injured, sometimes they're offered money and they have a settlement, and companies come in and say, because they're getting their settlement over time, companies come in and say, do you want your money right away? I'll come and help you and get your money right away. And they come in and they basically screw the people over. They never really get the money that they needed. So it's a lot of corruption in this like quick cash industry. And they just did a beautiful job in showing how problematic this is, and probably kept more people from doing this process. This is from a few years ago, but I love this. This is from La Nacion. Anybody in here from there? Okay. They got a set of notebooks from the driver of a public official who was basically driving bags of money around for bribes. And then many of the people who were giving the bags also got contracts with the government, and it has led to a high number of people being jailed and convicted, including one president. So this is a really amazing story, and I love how they did the turning pages, which all that turned. They took all that handwritten pages and turned that into data. And this is the database.
And just before we go on, how many people are working now with turning text, unstructured data into structured data? Do we have a few people? Yeah. That has just taken off, and there are a lot of good tools now to help us, like Pinpoint or whatever. It's really been a game changer to be able to take text and put it in some kind of structure, so once again we can count.
Yeah, I'm working on a project right now where we're trying to turn scrolly handwriting old documents from the 1800s into text that can be used. And there's actually some models that help with those kinds of things.
Okay, so how many people have been working with air safety data? How many, do we have a lot of that? There is so much data out there these days, and we're going through another phase of air safety problems wherever they may be. This was a really good one done after yet another crash in Nepal. And there's actually air safety annual reports that come out. They have nice columns and rows on every accident and injuries and deaths done in a lot of nations now. And so I would dig around and see if that report comes out. A lot of people just don't know it's there, and you just have an instant database to work with. The other thing is, although it is a U.S. database, there's a database on airport incidents that is done in the U.S. and it involves any flight that comes into the U.S., international flights or whatever, and anyone can file a report to the federal officials about something they see go wrong at a particular airport. And when we were using it a lot, giving it to other people, we called it the snitch and bitch file because you got incredible stuff. You not only got incidents, but you had narrative descriptions of the incident. And pilots are very encouraged to report themselves because they won't be persecuted or prosecuted if they self-report that they screwed up. I would not read this database before you get on a plane, but it's a pretty incredible database that can be used by many countries.
I said, don't do this one. I had 2 aborted landings on my way here, so I don't really want to hear about it.
So this is one in which video has become a data set. I don't know if anyone saw this, but it really showed how propaganda is moving across video, put together a lot of different videos to actually track propaganda. Again, I really recommend taking a look at this because you start to think of video clips as data in a very real way, and you can track it. Okay. You want to do this?
No, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
You
So
put your name on it.
I know. Put my name on this one. That's because I'm obsessed with all these projects that are being done with data on who's really getting hit with the extreme heat now. There's a really good one that was the LA Times. There's been in the US, ones in Baltimore. You can basically, there's a methodology now to see who is suffering in the cities in your country, who's suffering the most, and it's usually the most impoverished, et cetera. But there's a nice methodology for measuring this with sensors or with data that's available. This was a really solid one, yeah. Do you want to do this? Or
No, you.
Okay. So this one, I think they wrote it pretty well, but it was a tough one to do. But basically, they tracked in the U.S., this is Wall Street Journal, the thousands of officials in the executive branch reported owning or trading stocks as to the rise or fall of decisions their agencies made. The lead was very simple. You just have people trading stocks within industries they regulate. It took a lot of work to pull it all together, but it was the database sitting there, and it's kind of a shame we didn't do it earlier as an industry. So you can say the journal obtained and analyzed more than 31,000 financial disclosure forms for 12,000 employees. So you can, and they could have done some of this with Securities and Exchange Commission, but this particular disclosure form made it possible to do this. Another one I'm obsessed with, of course. I don't know if, has everyone seen this one? It was done by several different organizations, and the graphics with this are terrific. So it appeared in the New York Times, but it was done with several different organizations. And another good example of teaming up with people who have technical expertise, I think it's called Earthrise. They have all this incredible data and satellite data. So you could just see where all these planes were landing on hidden airstrips throughout Brazil as a part of the illegal mining industry. Well, one last thing about that. It was a nice data set because it combined with observations literally on the ground, and they teaming with indigenous people to also track what was happening with these airstrips. Go ahead.
This is a really good financial piece about how, from The Guardian, about how the privatized owners of water in England are actually making a ton of money selling it to other places instead of making it available locally. And water is just one of those things, especially, in places where there isn't enough or it's privatized, that there's always something to dig into. I live in California, and obviously water is a huge deal there. This is a great example of a local story. The young woman who did this story got court records and built a database to show, I can't remember what it is, and I don't have my notes, but it was so good. Is there anybody who speaks Swedish in here? What does it say? Okay. And she built this all from court records and building her own database, which, even a small news organization can use these techniques to do powerful stories. The Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism, I think some of those folks are here, does a lot of international projects looking at all kinds of things. This is one of their stories looking at the lottery industry. So they got data from countries all over the world to look at the lottery industry and the schemes and how lots of people very few people are making money, and individuals are getting caught in these lottery schemes that are then financially hurt by it. This is another story that came out of a collaboration, a CCIJ collaboration. They've done a series of stories about water in Africa. This is one looking at the really poor sewage treatment systems in South Africa. And this is an older US story, but I love the story because it's a build your own database. ESPN does this every year. They go and they get the health inspection reports for every professional stadium around the country. And they're able to show the stadiums that have the most health problems. And so this is one of my favorite leads, which is most Cracker Jack boxes come with a surprise inside. At Coors Field in Denver, the molasses-flavored popcorn and peanut snacks come with a live mouse.
And they charge extra.
Yeah, and they have to do this like county by county because health records are not something, there's no national database of health records, so they compile this all together every year. Okay, so I also wanted to just mention a few data search tools, which are places where you can get data for like a whole country. So Brazil has Tattoo, which is a data portal. It also just might give you ideas of what other data you might look for. OCCRP's Aleph, which is documents and data. The Accountability Project, which is a US project that I help work on. And we have right now almost 2 billion records of public data in the US, so people can search across things that they'd have to go to a lot of different places to get otherwise. And then ICIJ's Offshore Leaks collection, which is a lot of documents and data that still is creating stories. Okay, and if you want some inspiration, and if you guys have more suggestions, I would love to hear them. The Sigma Awards, which are the International Data Journalism Awards. GIJN has Data Journalism Top 10. I think they do that once a month, maybe. Yeah. The Phil Meyer Awards from the U.S. Investigative Reporters and Editors, and then a site called datajournalism.com where they highlight interesting stories, and we'll give you some ideas.
And there's just a few of them. But one thing I wanted to mention about Philip Meyer is he was an inspiration for a lot of us because he pushed bringing social science techniques into journalism. And he's a pioneer in that. And this award is constantly trying to recognize the latest methodologies as opposed to not necessarily the best investigative story, but the best new methodologies that really open our eyes to possibilities of other investigations.
And the great thing about groups like this and these resources and maybe your own investigative reporting groups is sometimes you might want to do something that you think is impossible to do, but someone else might have done something similar, and they're often willing to help you do it for your own story. Okay. Where to get more training, where to learn more. There's links to a bunch of places where you can get journalism training materials. And you can also get training here. So Brant's going to talk a little bit about what training is available hands-on here.
So over time, there's sort of been a curriculum, at least for professional journalists, that's built up. And we basically say you start everything with a spreadsheet. And I'm just going to do a poll as I go here, because I love doing it over the years. So how many people here use Excel or Google Sheets and are really pretty comfortable using them? Okay. Yeah.
Wow, that's so
See, we just feel so good saying it. I'll tell you, and you can see we may have diminishing returns, and just remember you saw all the hands up for Excel. So as we move along, you'll see some hands go down. Is anyone using Data Wrapper or Flourish? Okay, yeah, and I think COVID, there were many bad things about COVID, but a good thing was we all got more used to data and visualizing it. I was hard pressed to find COVID graphics that weren't being done with Data Wrapper or Flourish. And then this is coming along because not everybody wants to be a coder or can, but you really need to understand it now. So we're doing a lot of, especially here, overview of what coding is and what it can do for you, because most journalists, including myself, really don't want to learn another piece of software unless we can put it to use and do a story. So all this is very story-driven in terms of knowledge. Intermediate keeps changing, but I still think something like database managers. How many people use a database manager now? That would be like SQLite, DB Browser, Microsoft Access. Hold your hands up for just a second. Okay, this is coming up fast. We usually get like 4 hands, so that's great. Mapping data, how many people are using maps of some kind? And mapping's gotten so much easier, thank goodness. Who really enjoys cleaning data? The best job in the world, right?
Really?
Not. Oh my God. I live near several cities, and 2 of them get misspelled so many different ways. One is St. Louis. There are 4 ways to put St. Louis into a database, and they're all 4 different cities. And then there's Chicago, which apparently has a data entry problem, which always surprises me. So mapping, cleaning data, these are things that you don't get that prepared, accurate Excel or Google Sheet that you really want. And then more advanced is R and Python, which are kind of, we tend to coalesce around particular software during various decades. Right now it's coming there. How many people use Python in some way? Numbers are really coming up. And R, yeah, I'm just waiting till R can also do your house cleaning for you, ironing. It's like if you talk to an R person, R does everything. Why do you need anything else? Well, it does, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway,
There's a package for that.
Yes, that's right. So anyway, that's kind of a way to kind of think about what you need to learn. And again, whatever I've learned, it was because I wanted to apply it immediately to something else. One of the interesting things in the history of this is early on in doing data-driven work, people got loyal to software. And it's like we had conferences in which somebody would say, I'm doing a panel on spreadsheets versus database managers. It's really crazy. And our whole thing is you just want to find the right tool for the right job, and don't make things overly complicated. And that's kind of our approach to teaching all this too. Anything else you want to say on this one? And then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Well, and to make it for me, I always try to focus on what is the story? Who can I hold accountable? Even if it's a data story, how can I humanize it? And if I've got lots and lots of numbers, that is the best thing for the visualization and graphics. But to find the most powerful story numbers for the story. Sometimes there are databases that you can use and look through and you find something interesting, but I always try to start with a thesis so that I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah. The hypothesis that turns out to be wrong is probably the most exciting story there is.
Why did that go to that?
That's because I like to have food in the background. I am a big exponent of doing anything in data on food. I've never done a story that involved food that didn't get a great audience. Locally with my students, we go through restaurant inspections and get the most visitors to social media and anything else, and they're disgusting stories, but they're really fun to do. I'm also deep in doing agriculture stories, and particularly big ag. And if anyone's interested in working on those things, let me know. I'm involved with a nonprofit out in the U.S. that's all food, all ag, and especially big ag and how they're destroying us. So, but I just like having that in the background.